What's up, guys? It's D22 Soso Wayne Chung live at the bike, and this man needs no introduction. It is Barry Greenstein.
I have a feeling there's some people out there who don't know who I am.
Who don't know?
Yeah.
What's audience? What's the over under? What percent? What do you think the percent don't of poker players?
Well,
Poker
no, the
players.
younger they are, I've been on any of the televised stuff for a while now.
They still go on YouTube and see like you have some epic hands. You have a big hand with Durr. With you
Don't,
have.
don't remind me. I lost most of those.
We're gonna comment on some of those about like fates in life. Like if you
Yeah,
win certain
yeah.
hands, like how your fate could possibly
Yeah,
change.
I think most people don't understand that because they either think those things were fixed or that the money was put up for you
Yeah,
and it wasn't real money or maybe you were pieced out, which, maybe some people are, but I wasn't.
perhaps. Yeah,
So, yeah, those big pots
change lives.
definitely made a difference for me and made a difference for the people who beat me.
Right, right. And we'll get into those. So let's start with the Barry Greenstein story and just how you got into poker in general.
Um, well, the people who know me probably know that, when I had pretty liberal parents where my dad played poker in the Army, and when I was about 4 years old, we had a chip set for poker, and we played games and Scrabble and board games and card games, and I used to play canasta and gin rummy with my mom. And but when I was 4 or 5, my dad was already teaching me five card draw.
Was
And
it jacks or better back then, or was
no,
it
no,
just straight up?
just straight up probably. But and for those of you, well, I'll give a quick quiz. Why wouldn't he teach me Hold'em? I hope
It,
you know the answer to that.
it wasn't popular then, or
It hadn't been invented yet.
right, right, yeah,
Okay, so
yeah,
yeah,
I
so
figured.
so a lot of times people say, "Hey, when you were a teenager, you play Hold'em." Nope, there was no Hold'em. I mean, it was invented, maybe when I was 10 to 12 years old, but it didn't get to
Popular.
Illinois. No, it didn't get to my area of the country
Oh, okay.
until I probably went to college. Was the first time I'd ever heard of Hold'em.
So this is a cool thing. So you know the evolution. So it's five card draw. Then was it five card stud?
Five card stud was a really big game. That was the big game. I remember they had like a big buy-in game in Reno. I get when I say big, I always get confused because as time goes on, money
Big. Yeah.
changes,
Right.
and
Right.
it's funny that like $1,000 would have been my whole bankroll. Let's say when I was a freshman in college, um, and then I played really big. Let's say in the from 2000 to 2013, and now I'm playing smaller than I did now. So they're
A lot of people are, including me.
right. So I no, but the thing is, I kind of normalize for my
What big
time. It's
is?
it's just chips in some sense,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like all the same, and people don't look at it that way because the economy usually over time money is worth less usually
Yes.
because there's inflation.
Inflation. Yeah.
But the poker economy doesn't go the same way the global or the country economy goes. There was a lot of leisure money for many years up until about 2008. And so we could play bigger because we had a lot of amateurs with money dumping money, and we had money from the websites from around 2000 to 2010. People were making a lot more money, so the games were bigger, and then it went really downhill fast with the global recession
So the
and the poker
dot-com crash
recession.
in 2000, but then it was a boom with the moneymaker boom, and then the housing crash in 2008,
Yeah,
right? And then yeah,
yeah. I know it's called the moneymaker boom, and that's the year it happened.
hmm
And Chris is a friend of mine. I like Chris a lot, but I probably think less than anyone who was there at the time that he had much to do with it, actually. A lot of people do. To me, it was the online sites. Two things really happened. Online sites meant people could play in their own home,
yeah,
people who didn't live near casinos.
right,
And also online, chat rooms and all these things meant people could discuss poker and get better that way. Because when I was young, there was no such thing as a good poker book. They were entertaining. You didn't learn poker from poker books.
learn from
You
playing,
learned from playing.
yeah,
And there was no such thing as videos with good players. There's no such thing as people talking amongst themselves and getting better. We were all loners.
right. Well, let's start back then. So you said you played gin rummy. Did you know Stu Unger?
Yeah, of course, I knew Stu, and obviously I wasn't as good a player as Stu. But when I say I played gin rummy, I played with my mom originally.
Oh,
But
okay, not
also,
him.
when you would have poker games in home games, and remember I grew up in Illinois, in Chicago, and then downstate where I went to school at Champaign. Urbana.
I was born in Urbana-Champaign.
Okay, as a lot of poker players are, by
Yeah.
the way. Jimmy Fricke, Faraj Xhaka,
Oh,
Mohsen Trania. I'm missing a few guys who are from down there.
shout to Chi-Town.
But, well, that's actually downstate. They went to University of Illinois also.
Okay.
We had a lot of good poker players went down there, went there. But um, so I played in home games. So when you play in home games, you don't have the same restrictions as casino. So before the games, we would play gin rummy until we had enough people for a poker
Right,
game. So
right.
so I played a lot of gin rummy for money, and again, it's like poker. People will say, "Well, were you good or were you bad?" I was better than the people I
Right,
played,
right,
so I
right.
could
Yeah.
make money.
Yeah.
And then I remember when I went to Texas, I would play in Houston. That's kind of I got better at Houston. I traveled around, and people in Texas had been playing Hold'em much longer than people in Illinois.
Yeah.
They were better players, and so I played there. We played half and half, no limit low ball, no limit Hold'em, at what was called the Red Men's Club in Houston. And instead of playing gin rummy, they played backgammon, some of them. And I actually was already a really good backgammon player, where I was good enough to play in the Cavendish's clubs and all that. So I was, if not world class, close to it.
Hmm.
And these guys were really bad. So I remember one time I saw how bad they were, and I'm telling my friend, I don't want to play the poker game. I'm hoping it never starts playing against these guys. They're
Right.
totally drawing dead.
Right.
So you get into some of these situations. That's why I always tell people, in with mixed games, whatever. I was a games player. I was always good at all
A
games,
gamer. Yeah.
and I, for as long as I can remember, tried to get good at games and sports because I would play them for money. Even basketball. Obviously, I'm not tall. I was never a good basketball player, but we played games where you'd shoot free throws and get the tips. A game called tips. All these different things, and so I would practice all that stuff. Practice golf. I don't remember. Baseball was the national pastime when I was a kid. I played baseball every day up until I was like 13. So I was a good baseball player, but I don't remember playing that for money. But even that, only indirectly.
Don't remember.
Yeah, because I know it sounds bad, but from the time I was 12, it's like everything we did was gambling, and so I would try things and get better at some gymnastics type thing or pull-ups, and a lot of times it's because I knew I would bet on it. I mean, like I remember I bet that I could get up on a rooftop in less than 5 seconds,
Wow.
and I could run and jump and grab the gutter and pull myself up and do it in like 2 seconds
Yeah.
because I was a pretty good athlete. And
And now you look back, you're like, wow, I could have like hurt myself back then.
no, no. I never looked at that like that. But so it's just different things. There were things to bet on. I mean, so I liked it when people like Ted Forrest and Huck Seed, who are younger than me, who got into prop bets because I was like a senior to them. And like I remember with Huck Seed, we'd be, when we weren't playing poker, running backwards and timing ourselves, doing somersaults and timing ourselves to see what our times were. And that by the time we bet, and I had a lot of fun with these guys who were younger than me. By the time we bet, we already knew what we could do. Some would say, I'll spot you 50 yards in a 100-yard dash and you run back. Well, we knew whether we were going to win or not
yeah, right.
before we even bet because we had practiced that stuff.
Right. I haven't played Huxley in a long time. Like, actually, before the boom, like, I remember playing with him at Bellagio, like 10-20 no limit. And he's, like, phenomenal. I think he's a really underrated legend as well.
Yeah. He's got
Went to Caltech and, yeah.
Of course, he's a smart kid and a good player. And, he has a kid, and I'm hoping he spends more time with his kid.
Yeah,
That's one of the
yeah.
reasons. His son's a teenager. And Huck was a runner, and, it's just like his brother Leaf. And, I think Huck's probably gotten his son into running, I would imagine. But Huck shows up at the World Series every year. That's when I see him.
Yeah. And Ted Forrest.
Ted's out on the East Coast, and he's Ted. He's in his own world a lot of times, but
Yeah.
he's underrated also. He's not
I don't
the
familiar
player
with
he
him
was,
much, I don't
but
know.
he
Yeah.
was a stud pioneer.
Yeah.
7-card stud,
Yeah.
betting wise and doing things. He kind of looked like he didn't know what he was doing a lot of times, but it
Ahead of
ended
the
up
curve.
he knew a lot more than we did. A lot of us did. A lot of people, whether it's John Hennigan, David
Shout out to
Oppenheim,
John, yeah.
myself,
Yeah.
we got better at stud because we played with Ted.
Got it.
So Ted was good.
Let's see. What years are we about now. So you had 5 card draw, and then
Well, five card draw was like I said, that was a big game, but again, there's too much possibility of cheating at five card draw because if there's a marked card, you only have one down card. It's pretty dangerous.
oh,
So
you mean 5 card stud?
I mean, five card stud.
Yeah,
Yeah, five card stud was the early big game.
yeah.
Five card draw is an old game. I mean, if you go back in the 1800s, all they did, I mean, it was actually originally you got five cards and you bet.
Yeah,
And then they said, hey, let's draw, which now sounds
ridiculous.
one betting sounds like what a lame game. You only draw one time
Yeah.
and then you bet and you have two betting intervals.
Hmm.
I mean, no one would even want to play something but that. But that was like adventurous.
You got to start somewhere.
Yeah, adventurous at some point. And seven card stud was the game, like say, my dad played in World War II because that's got, what, 4 or 5 betting intervals: 3 card, 4
Yeah.
card, 5 card, 6
3.
card, 7 card. 3,
Right.
4, 5.
It has an
6,
extra
7.
betting streak than
It
hold'em.
has an extra betting streak, so it's 5 betting intervals. And so, yeah, lots of times a chance to bet, and bad players couldn't figure out what the boards meant as well. So, yeah, I probably learned a little bit of that from my dad. When I was in high school, though, we were playing 5 card stud. And I remember I had a home game. And
Did you rake? No? Were
no.
you just the best player in the home game?
No, we didn't rake. Or maybe some of the people charged, maybe because you got food or something.
Right.
You know, because it wasn't at my house all the time. But my dad, kind of snuck down there and watched. And again, I was only 14 years old, something like that. But, as I say, he's pretty permissive. And I remember he watched and he just said, you don't fold any hands. You don't know what you're doing. And you know how you don't want to listen to your parents all the time. Although I was pretty good at listening to my dad, but he was right. I was playing too many hands, so I tightened up a little and
Tight is
got
right.
better. Yeah. But
you heard it from here. Barry Greenstein's dad invented tight is right.
No. Well, he just said tighter than I was playing. My dad's a pretty conservative investor and conservative player. And then when I went to college, we started playing 7-card high-low split type games.
Yeah.
And
Was Omaha 8 or better, or just high-low 7-card stud 8 or better?
Omaha 8 or better didn't come in until like 1978, somewhere in that range. So that's after I had graduated from college.
My birthday.
So, so in the 70s, yeah, they did play 7-stud high-low with no qualifiers.
Wow.
At first, what happened is I wanted to play someone heads up, whatever. I don't even think Hold'em yet. But then he said, how about high-low split? This guy became a lawyer and I think a judge, okay? But I was in college with him. And I didn't know 7-card high-low split, and I know the story afterwards. He borrowed money from someone to play me, and the other guy took half of them, guy who had a good job. And like for the first half hour, I was just learning the game, and like I probably played a pair of kings, which was meant I'm free rolling him.
Yeah.
It's 7-card stud high-low split, and then like it maybe took me a half hour, an hour, and I said, I can only get my money back playing these high hands, and I reversed to low. But I was a better poker player than him, just inherently knowing what his cards were the way he was betting better than him.
Yeah.
Once I learned, I busted him, and then a couple years went by where I was then recognized as the best player in the area, at my college. And I remember him saying, I can't believe I thought I was hustling you heads up, and which he was. It was a game I didn't know, but
right. But you just adapt.
I adapted and learned it pretty quickly. And, then Hold'em came in. But we didn't, I did play when I was in my 20s Hold'em. Like I say, I traveled to Houston, played in Indiana and Illinois, different games there, and did start playing Hold'em and got to where, although actually it wasn't my favorite game.
Hold'em. Yeah, I didn't really like Hold'em in the beginning either because I started 7-card stud.
Well, I was a no-limit Hold'em player.
Oh, okay.
I hated limit poker. I never thought I'd play limit poker.
But
there was one game in Indiana where they play like 10 to 12 people at the table and played limit Hold'em.
That's crazy.
They were really bad players.
Yeah.
Whoever was there played, and they sat around this table.
Right.
But no, I was a no-limit Hold'em player. And although my favorite game when I was in college was definitely high-low declare.
High-low declare?
I was really good. You use 1 coin, 2 coins. No coins means you're going low, I guess.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah. I
One
do.
coin, you go behind your back.
Yeah, and
Two
then you
coins,
go, you
one
declare.
coin means you're going high. 2 coins means you're going both ways, and you have to win both ways.
Right.
And I really liked that game. Um, and I was really good at knowing which way people were going. And it kind of started out in a funny way. We had, sometimes there'll be people cheating at anything, not just poker, but everything else. And I played against these guys. What happened was, I got players by putting an ad in the paper. I put an ad in the school newspaper for poker lessons.
This is awesome.
And it ended up working out really perfectly because I would get these phone calls. Who are you to be giving poker lessons? I'm
Nice.
better at poker than you.
Nice.
And they come over to prove they could beat me.
Right, and then you're just
And
like...
we get a game. We get a game of people. Yeah, so it's all from people who would not wanted poker lessons, were insulted that I would think they needed my poker lessons. So that worked out pretty well.
It's kind of ironic with this show. I'm just kidding.
Right. But someone also put in, I don't know what, the guy advertised for a home game. I mean, it's kind of stupid in the school newspaper. But I remember I went to their apartment, and they were cheating.
Mm-hmm.
And we were playing high-low declare. And what they would do, the way they held their hands or something, this meant like the guy was going high. Whenever they had a strong hand, this meant it was strong high or strong low.
Right.
Well, very quickly, there were such primitive signals.
Out, right.
So what happened, I would get in these three-way pots with these two guys where the one guy had nothing, was jacking it up, and the other guy had something. And it didn't matter if I had aces up or whatever. I'd go low once the guy announced that he had a strong hand high. I would go low.
And they'd be like, what's going on?
And they're like looking at each other because they're thinking, well, I'm going to be going the wrong way enough of the times, and they've milked the pot, because one guy has a lock.
Yeah.
And so I go the other way. And there's one more betting street after you declare. Mm-hmm. And so on the end, it'd always be the guy with the good hand bet. I'd raise even going the wrong way for my hand, knock the other guy out, and we'd chop it.
And then you get the split.
Because there was no qualify.
Right.
And I get the chop. So I was making money, and these guys kept going out in the hall, and I hear them yelling at each other. What are you doing? Well, then you have to fold. You don't have to be in. He said, well, you had a strong. He said, and I'm even hearing what they're saying. And then to make it worse, while they're out in the hall, I told the other people in the game what the signals were. So they
Does
wouldn't
he
get
look
trapped
like a
by
man
them.
who's beaten by jacks? I'm just kidding.
So that was...
That's awesome.
So I remember that. Yeah, a lot of things where we had people cheating, and then you had to have the counter to the cheating.
Right. And then what year is this? Then No Limit Hold'em, and then
that's in the early 1970s.
Wow, that's like a couple decades before Rounders, and then High Stakes Game, and then the Moneymaker boom, and the online stuff.
Yeah, and then...
So go through your chronology for...
So then in the late 70s, I kind of screwed up. I was in graduate school, and that's when I did most of my traveling. I was playing blackjack was pretty lucrative, and I could go and play on these junkets and make money, go to Europe, go to Vegas, and all this type of stuff. So I was doing some of that, and then I was traveling, playing a lot of poker, and it was bad because I did it mainly because I could make money at it. And it was good, and it was a good lifestyle. I had a really good life. When I was in my lower 20s, I had a Jaguar, and I belonged to a country club, so I had plenty of money.
Sure.
Because I'd made a lot of money gambling. And even though I was getting my PhD in math, I told my advisor, my thesis advisor, I don't think I'm going to be a math professor like he expected me to be.
He was devastated.
Because I told him, I said, I make more money than, I don't mean to be mean, but I make more money than all the professors already, so it doesn't make sense.
Right.
And I've probably told this story before, but I remember it's kind of natural to get interviewed for jobs anyway. And I'd gotten a bachelor's degree in computer science. The first year any schools even offered it, I changed because computers were new. It's not what you guys think of a computer, microcomputers.
Oh yeah,
it's mainframes and mini computers, very different. Yeah. Microcomputers didn't exist yet. But I just decided if I ever do need to get a job, since they now offered a degree in computer science, I might as well get it. So I changed to the College of Engineering instead of being a math major and got my bachelor's in computer science, but then went for my PhD in math, State at University of Illinois. But I remember when I was probably 23 or 24, I could have actually taken my PhD then because I'd finished all the what they call the quals and prelims, all the tests, uh, and was working on my thesis. So what happens is just a natural thing. They set up interviews for you to be a math professor. And I'll never forget this interview from University of Pittsburgh. I could get a job almost anywhere because I had that Bachelor of Computer Science. And all these schools were starting to have a computer science program. So if they found out you could teach computer science and math, you was like slam dunk.
Right.
Everyone wanted you. So I was a pretty hot commodity there. And these guys from University of Pittsburgh are interviewing me. And I'm not hearing what they're saying because all I'm thinking of is, how do I ask them if the poker games are good there? Because I really hate leaving these poker games I've got at University of Illinois.
Right.
We had a really good poker scene.
Right.
And so it's like I didn't hear anything they said. And then, I just thanked them. They offered me a job, and I
politely declined.
I declined because there's no way I could find out. I was even thinking of flying.
Game,
I mean, I didn't know if I wanted to be a math professor anyway, but I thought the only reason I might want to be a math professor, I really enjoyed math. People always say, "Oh, you love poker? You're passionate about poker?" No, I was very passionate about math. I was very passionate about programming and creating things. When I worked at Symantec and creating programs, because for me, doing something no one's ever done before is kind of a really big kick.
Sure. Yeah.
So I really liked solving unsolved problems, creating computer programs that no one else had ever done before. That I was passionate about. And when I was, from 15 to 17, I was really passionate about golf. That was something I would, stay out at night until it was dark, just practicing golf because I was, the best junior golfer from the city of Chicago, so I was real good at that. So those are the things I remember being passionate about. Poker was something I could make money at.
Right.
And again, I wasn't raised that materialistically. So money is nice, and I recommend you try to have it. It's better to have money. But as I always tell people, the reason to have money is so you can do the things you're passionate about.
You're right.
Money makes your life easier.
Yeah.
And if you have a family, money allows you to support them in a nice way.
Exactly.
That's what money is for. Passionate about making a lot of money, I never really felt the passion. It was just poker's always been a way I could do it.
Right. No, I was the same way. I tried to explain that to my family. I'm just like, we have this window here, and it's like a skill set that the world demands too. Like, when you're out offering poker lessons, or when people are watching the World Series of Poker, you in high stakes poker, it's like a demand from the human race to want to see that stuff.
Right,
so we just, go in. But
I always tell people, and this will make them understand it. If I cared as much about money as you think, because you see me playing for money, it would be hard to bluff for all the money I have.
Yeah.
It's because I don't care about money. And that's why you'll see poker players are notoriously reckless with money.
Yeah.
Whether it's in poker, whether it's in their lifestyles.
Right.
Because they don't value money the way normal people do.
Yeah, and that was something I had to readjust because obviously I came from a middle class family, so obviously you have certain value systems. And then when I did the internet startup stuff, which is when the internet came out, it was just an amazing phenomenon that just can't be duplicated again.
You mean the .com?
The .com.
Yeah. So my son Joe, who's probably close to your age, was in .com companies too.
So basically, I was a professional gamer, StarCraft World Champion, and it came at a time when the .com was about to crash, and I had an ex at the time too, and just a reflection, what am I going to do? I don't think I could see through this .com era, and I didn't even know about the crash. I think times were getting hard. So I went back to school, and the .com crashed, so thankfully I did, because I don't think I could have saw it through, even though a lot of strong people were able to see it through. But then when you're in college, prices were going up like crazy, and how are you going to pay for it? So I applied for internships. I drew comics for the school paper. I'm like, this is not paying for...
You're good at art?
Not for this era, but back then I could cut it.
Okay, well, that's impressive.
A lot of stuff's relative. At that time, it was less competitive. It's when you were in Chicago, the games were less competitive.
Right.
So it's relative. So then that's where the poker boom started happening, and I was playing small stakes online in Paradise Poker and live in the San Diego Indian casinos. We started 3-6 limit hold'em on the way up, and the whole card technology came out, which we play with Henry Ornstein, who
Right. Yeah,
invented
of
that
course.
stuff. We played high stakes 7 card stud with him.
All right.
Then the moneymaker boom happened, the online stuff happened, and then that allowed like people my age to catch up to the high stakes like very quickly, and then was
Hmm.
playing with you for a while. But like you were in the super high stakes with the like Tom
Right.
Dwan
Right.
and Phil
I,
Hellmuth,
I
SNER.
just want to compare it to my son Joe. How old are you?
I'm 41 now.
Okay, and so he's 1977 or five. I can't remember. I
Either
have
way,
three
he's
kids now.
slightly older than
So
me.
he's a couple years older. So yeah, that's well, the way. So he did a similar path because when his company crashed, .com company went under. That's when he came to me. He said, "You always said that you could teach me poker if you wanted to." I intentionally didn't even have cards at home
Mm.
because I didn't want my kids to be poker players.
Barry is a good father.
Well, some of my kids think so, and some don't. It changes.
Variance,
Yeah,
variance.
they all do at times, especially if they need something from me.
Right, right, right.
But then I get a lot of compliments. But anyway, so he came to me because I taught Mimi to play, and Mimi was making a lot of money then.
Shout out to Mimi Train.
Yeah, and he said, "You said that you could teach me, but you decided not to." He said, "Well, my company went under. Will you teach me?" And I said, "Oh yeah, but you got to take it seriously." And he's
Yeah.
taken it. I've mentored a lot of people, as I'm sure you know,
Yes.
and I'm proud of Joe. He worked at it like it was a college course. He had spreadsheets of each hand he played, what he did, and then I'd have to read over it and tell him what I thought he should have done differently. So he really was studious about it. And it actually, I mean, he's my kid. I expect a lot of him, and he did well in school. Went to Berkeley, got his degree
Shout
in
out to Joe.
psychology. So I mean, he's a smart kid. I already knew that and expected that. But I was proud of the way he handled it and took it very seriously. And within a year, he made 2 televised final tables at the World Series of Poker.
Sick.
So that's how hard he worked. I mean, obviously you have to have luck to get there, and there's variance and all
Oh,
that.
come on. How are the same 5 people
But
making the
he,
final table World Series of Poker?
I'm not going to say he was a top poker player because he wasn't, but I taught him how to play tournaments, which is a lot easier than to be a successful cash game player
Right.
because there's so much background of what you have to do. I mean, it's like I know Sasha, my friend, and your friend doesn't like
Yes.
to hear it, but I always try to tell her your play is so relatively unimportant to your management.
Right. The chip management.
Like I
It's just
see all
survival.
these people, and I read, and like it even reminds me of another person who plays on Live at the Bike, Kitty Kuo.
Kidding, man.
And I'll see Sasha and Kitty saying, "I'm going home to study poker," and I'm thinking, you guys really don't know how almost irrelevant what you're doing is. They're both good players already, good enough to win.
Yeah.
It's managing your
The
sessions
resources.
and when to play and not playing tired and and so many other things. Playing in good games. There's so many things that you do to become a winning poker player.
Right.
Not steaming when you're stuck. This isn't something you're going to study. These are things that you have to.
You work on.
Yeah, these are really important skills that you need as a professional cash game player. You can be a steamer and be a tournament player. Because so what? You lost a big pot and you're steaming, you're out already.
Right.
It's really not that big a deal.
I never really thought of it.
And
that
a
way.
lot of
Yeah.
times you see these steamers, like, I never understood, I didn't play tournaments, and, I played some cash games with Phil Hellmuth. And, I didn't think that much of his cash game play. But I did notice when we played cash games, he could build stacks really a lot.
Really?
And then get rid of them too,
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And then I saw Mimi had a lot of that in her too. And she would just build up, play pretty fast, try to win. Like, the tournament players are trying to win every pot. The cash game players are trying not to lose anything. Like, they're trying to hold even until a good situation comes up.
Right.
They're cutting their losses all the times.
Yeah.
The tournament players don't even understand this idea of making sure you don't have a big loss. And so I can see when I play cash games with people that who's a natural to jump into tournaments and who's not.
Right.
And I had to trick Mimi to play tournaments. What happened is she said, no, she was making a lot of money. She says, if I play a tournament, it's like I lost a day of work, which is now how I think about playing tournaments. That I need to work and I shouldn't be playing tournaments. The only time I really play was the World Series. But I told her I had bought her an entry to the first event, which in those days was limit hold'em, like a 2,000 limit hold'em. She said, "Well, I'm not going to play it." I said, "Oh, it's too bad because there's no refunds, and so I guess we're out 2,000." By the way, it was a total lie.
Yeah.
I hadn't even bought the entry, but I was trying to see what happened. She said, "Well, I don't want you losing 2,000."
You're bluffing people you know. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And so her very first tournament was this big field limit hold'em tournament. She came in fourth.
Sick.
They had a decent chance to win it. The second tournament she ever played in her life was later at that same, I think, World Series. She came in second.
Then it's
Got
all
heads
over.
up.
She's like
In
tournaments.
the first 10 events she played, she had like 2 seconds, a third, and a fourth. First 10 World Series events. So
Wow.
it's an amazing run. And one of them was heads up against John Esposito. And then what happened is limit hold'em kind of died a little. People wouldn't play with her is actually what happened in L.A. once we came here because she had been winning so much. So she had to learn another game, and I taught her 7-card stud.
I played stud with her in the
And then she
game.
got to where she's a decent stud player.
Yeah.
Even that, I had to like make her sit behind me, which she really didn't like because again it meant she had time off of work. And she then played 7-card stud and got heads up for bracelet in that. Had a guy all in where she had aces up against 2 sevens, I think. Had him
They
all
made
in.
the
He hit
third
a 7,
yeah.
Or she'd have won that when she came in third. I mean, she came in second. She was heads up for the bracelet, so she had a pretty
That's
good run.
brutal. Yeah.
But anyway, I went off a tangent. But
It's okay.
one of
It's
the
all
early
good.
things we said was, I played no limit hold'em. I never thought I'd play limit hold'em. I considered, and again, it might sound sexist, chauvinist, or whatever, but I'd see, women doing well at limit poker. Not that I don't think women are intelligent, can do well at other things, but there's an aggressive factor having to do with no limit and big bet games.
Yes.
So the women who do well, so it's not totally sex linked, they have to have that aggression.
Yes.
So, women can have it as well as men, but men do biologically tend to have more aggression than women.
Sure.
So, the sexist thing I said, I remember this woman was challenging me to play limit hold'em, which I didn't play back in the day, and I say, that's a girl's game. Why would I even want to play it? Which put her down because she was considering herself like the top women's player. So, sexist thing to say nowadays. You couldn't say that, even though I just did. And now I play limit poker all the time because that's what happened. That limit poker got big. The rounder stuff and all that, and the televised stuff got no limit back going. For a while, I had to quit. I mean, I couldn't play no limit; it didn't exist in the '90s. The no limit homes games, it broke the people too quickly.
Yeah.
The limit kept the people in the casinos.
Right.
So it was just a better casino game.
That's kind of where we cross over too, because like I started with stud, limit hold'em, no limit, and then we branch off into other games, and then like, I saw you in high stakes poker, and then at Commerce you're playing the biggest games. I don't know if we probably played online at some juncture, and then
Yeah, well, I played with a lot because I played for Poker Stars, so I played all sorts of limits.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know, just play bigger limits. I played small limits. I played the smaller tournaments, stuff like that. So yeah,
But yeah,
and eventually, as I'm sure you know, when after Black Friday and I couldn't play online in the United States, I played Play Money I was the Play
Did
Money
you?
ambassador.
Oh, that's
for Poker
right. I
Stars.
remember that. Yeah, I didn't even.
I think
remember
I had
that.
the best. The best Play
The
Money
most
record.
chips, yeah.
I had the most chips and won the most big tournaments for the.
Who needs
period I
World
played.
Series bracelets when you have all the
So
play
yeah,
chips?
I've got that Play Money. It's a legacy going for me.
But there's I came in probably after the phase that no one would break people, and like I was warned about that, and then that's when 7-card stud and limit hold'em were in, and then the boom came, and at that time online poker was only limit hold'em because the software is obviously easy to program,
Right.
and then when no limit came out, you must have been like really excited.
Yeah, well, for a while I didn't play online. I got an account so Mimi could play online because she likes. You talk again. She was passionate about poker. I wasn't. So being able to play online, she liked that, and the tournaments and all that type of stuff. I didn't. What happened was, Ultimate Bet put in big games before anyone else, and they put in it was a 2,500 buy-in PLO game,
Okay.
and they eventually also got a 300, 600 triple draw game.
Yes, I vaguely remember this.
So that's when I started playing online, actually, was it on Ultimate Bet in those two games. And the PLO game, 2,500, I would bet anyone, and they stopped betting me, that if you give me, I can't remember what it was, let's say 2 hours, I will have 50,000 in front of me.
Wow.
And that didn't mean I would win 50,000 because I'd fire
Right. At the very
and then
yeah,
buy in
yeah.
again,
I
and
get it.
I might get in 10 buy-ins sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
But the players were so bad
That the stacks would go in.
that you could get you could get a five-way all-in for your 2,500 the
Wow.
first hand, and I was gonna have 50,000 in like 2 hours. It was
Right.
just scary. I wasn't in 50,000, so I would be ahead. The games were that easy to beat. It was just free money, and
So what year is this? This must have been like 2005, 6, 7 ish.
earlier.
Earlier?
Yeah,
4?
yeah. I don't know what year, but it's probably earlier than that, than 2005. Well, maybe around 2000. It had to be before I signed with PokerStars
Right, right.
because otherwise, because once I signed with PokerStars, I couldn't play on Ultimate Bet, and those things had died down. And obviously, eventually, Ultimate Bet had their scandals.
Right.
But so maybe you're right. Maybe it
I'm
was
getting
2003 or four.
yeah. So yeah, after the moneymaker boom, then Party Poker multi-table limit was big. I know Ultimate Bet, Poker Stars, and Full Tilt were probably existed around that time, and then like I know I dabble in all the sites, but I actually went to the even more side sites. Like I don't know if you remember Daniel Negreanu had his site. It wasn't one of those four, and he
Poker.
had a skin full. He had a full contact. Full contact. Yeah, full contact, and
Uh,
the Hollywood Poker, which James Wood's brother did.
yeah, I saw that, but I didn't play on Hollywood Parker
That was
Poker. I did. I invested in Doyle's Room, which was around the
oh
same
right,
time.
right. I remember that one too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so there was just a lot of options, and I did well in no limit party poker. But when I saw what was going on with the side sites, I was just like, and then obviously I was suspicious for the cash outs. By that time, that teller was pretty stable. So then when I got my first cash out, I'm like, all right, I'm going this route, and I'm just aggressively cashing out.
Thinly veiled brag that you were cashing out. I actually was not a good online poker player, so I can't brag about my cash
I
outs
wasn't the only one cashing
because,
out.
I was on the Ultimate Bet. I remember I made significant money there. But after that, even the whole time I was at Poker Stars, overall I was probably a losing player online because, again, we talk about skills of tournament players versus cash game players. My skills were reading people
Hmm.
and and this playing 4 games and 5 games. If I played more than 4 games, I was definitely a losing player. The one way I was at times able to make money in the high limit games is, and I end up killing myself. I would like look at David Benjamin, Patrick
Benjamin, yeah,
Antonius,
yeah.
and who else would play high? Some of these guys who I played some high stakes live poker with, I'd see them playing 4 or 5 games, and then I would play them a mixed game, just one game,
And they wouldn't pay attention.
and I would be watching their other tables. I knew once they're in a big like PLO pot
They're not paying attention.
that I can bluff them easier in my game,
That's smart.
and
Very
so
Greenstein, guys.
so I so I remember one time Patrick and David were sitting together, and they both were saying, we never beat. We were just like talking about it. You always win when we play you heads up. It's just ridiculous. And it was one of the dumbest things I ever did. And so I'm advising you don't have to. It's like being too honest with your girlfriend. I don't lie to my girlfriend, but it's not like I tell her everything because some things she's not gonna want to hear, so I don't say them. But you just have this thing while I'm out. Well, here's where I was stupidly honest, and I laughed. I said, "Yeah, whenever you guys are playing 4 games, I'm playing one. Kind of hard for you guys to beat me." And you know what happened? They stopped playing again.
Right,
Yeah, they
right,
wouldn't.
right.
They just made it a rule that they wouldn't play me unless they were only playing me 1 game, and then it was a competitive match. So
I've probably
very,
told you
very
this.
stupid.
I've probably told you this over the years, but not as pronounced. Like, and I tell the audience that like you learn more at the poker table than you do at like school or other things because there's so many different personalities with different backgrounds. So like when you drop these words of wisdom, like I don't remember what they were, but obviously we played together in a lot of games, and you would just like drop a word of wisdom, like, huh, that's good. That's more than I learned from like Socrates.
Yeah, well, and some people say, and I've even criticized people for teaching at the poker table. Well, normally, not that they're teaching, because most advice offered is stupid at the poker table.
Yes.
But it's just because it slows up the game.
Right.
People are teaching at the poker table. But I've always been one. Probably because I come from a teaching background. My father was a principal. My sisters were professors. I could have been a professor. So it's natural. If people ask me a question, I normally give them an honest answer. And
I've asked you many questions.
yeah, and so so normally I will not try to steer people wrong.
Right.
Uh, and some people will say that that's probably a mistake, but it actually, not pragmatic. You could say maybe it's a nice thing to do, but it's costing me money.
Yeah.
But the real truth is, especially 30 years ago, I would often be helping people out because it would be good for me to keep the games going. You want people to have enough competence that they aren't just drawing dead. I mean, even just for sport, maybe because I grew up playing sports, I never want to play against someone who has no chance to win. I mean, unless I was totally, totally desperate for money, maybe I would. And I would if they were like super rich, and I needed the money, and they were bad. But if I felt like, I even have it with one of the guys now, I won't name his name. He wanted to play me open face on the app. These guys, and
Yeah.
I'm better than the players who play here.
Right.
And I beat him pretty easily. And then he was saying, "Should I play you again?" I said, "No, you really shouldn't.
Yeah.
You need to get better. You can't win."
Yeah.
He said, "Well, then give me a spot." And I said, "Well, I don't want to waste my time and give you a spot to
Yeah,
where it's
yeah,
even. I don't want to do that either."
Right.
I said, "You just got to get better because you can't beat me at this point."
Yeah.
And so poker too. I never want to just beat someone who has no chance. I want to have the advantage, but I want it to be competitive. Because
I wouldn't go so far, but at the same time, like I get this a lot, like training sites or like live at the bike. People come up to me and complain. They're like, "Dude, like you're giving away all this info." I'm like, if you don't throw people a bone, they're not coming back either.
Well, yeah, that was the initial thing. I don't know if you know, I was one of the initial live at the bike announcers.
I didn't know that.
When
Shout out
what
to
what happened is Bart and Dave
Yeah.
were the initial announcers, and one of the first shows they invited me in.
Mm-hmm.
And Bart and Dave really didn't know how to play poker. Bart's turned into a pretty good poker player,
Right, yeah.
but they were pretty clueless, okay? So I did some of the early live at the bike things.
Sick.
I mainly did it to educate Bart and Dave so they could be good enough to announce poker. I was doing
That's
it for
doing
them.
a big service.
I was doing it for them to
yeah.
like help the poker community also.
Right.
And then they kept getting progressively better. I would come on every like couple months, and I could just see the growth instead of them like going straight. We see this hand beats that hand on the screen because they see the whole cards. Well, he should be betting and he should be folding. I say they were at that level initially, but then they could understand he's thinking he has this. Oh, and he's thinking he has that. They started now advancing, and getting better. But one story that it made me think about how I don't like to play against people who have no chance. About 3 years ago, I was at the World Series, and now I'm not playing high stakes anymore, so I'm out instead of in the Bobby's room or whatever, the private stuff, I'm out in the regular part of the floor, either at the Rio or the Bellagio, and we're playing some game that has a 2,000 buy-in. It might have been Badusi or game, whatever, games that a lot of people don't know. And this guy sees me playing. He says, Barry Greenstein, can I play in your game? And I say, well, we're playing this. He says, what's that? I don't know what that is. And I said, well, you can watch a few hands,
Yeah.
He says, no, I want to, go home and say I played with you. And I said, but you don't even know the game, And he says, that's okay, and
That's
he
crazy,
says to his friend, he says, what's the buy? And we say 2,000. He sits down and plays 2,000. He's busted in 20 minutes.
Right.
And he's drinking too. So he's probably in deuce 7, he's playing an ace in his hand, that type of stuff, where he's absolutely no chance, right?
Right.
So he loses 2,000, and then he says, he says to his buddy, hey, do you have any more money on you? And they're starting. I said, no, we don't even want to play with you.
Yeah.
The other people in the game kind of want to play with them, right?
Yeah.
But I'm saying, no, but I'm feeling like I'm the catalyst for this guy just giving away money.
Yeah.
It's not like I think he's some wealthy guy.
Right.
He's some 25-year-old in Vegas who took the last 2,000 out of his pocket and now is trying to get money from his friends.
Right.
So I said, no, just sit behind me. You can watch me play. You'll get better at the
Right.
games. He says, no, I want to play. So he ends up, they go into their pockets and get their last, hundreds out, and they come up with 2,000, okay?
Yeah.
He buys another 2,000, loses it within a half hour for sure, and if that long. And drinking more while he's playing and loses it. And I said, I told you guys, you shouldn't have played. If you don't know the game, you really shouldn't play. And you could have watched. And they said, oh, that's okay. So anyway, seems like the end of the story. Next year at the World Series, again, I'm sitting, whether it's Rio or Bellagio, and here's this guy. He's with some friends, and I didn't recognize him at first, it was the same guy. And he says, there's Barry Greenstein. I played with him last year. He hustled me out of 4,000.
It's
So
so funny.
so that's what happens when people have no chance.
Right. And you see me too. Like my role in poker has changed. Like I just let people sweat me all the time if they
Hmm.
don't know, and just yeah, it's your role
Yeah.
in poker changes
Right. Right.
sometimes. But yeah, it's just like it's just a crazy adventure and development of poker. Just getting this, I had no idea you were commentating for Live with Bike way back then,
Yep. Yep.
and now it's. Do you want to have any myth busters for like high stakes poker, like your famous hands if you had won them, or
Yeah. Well, I'm playing smaller probably because Durr had that hand where we were flipped for 900,000.
so that was he had you had aces, he had like king
King
queen
Queen of Spades, and
suited,
it came with Queen, and I'm still
but
Matt.
we had a flush draw too, so it was a flip, right?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a flip. I didn't run it, but it's real close to 50-50.
Yeah, I
And
think it was like 1% or something like
yeah,
that.
I don't even know which 1% which way.
It's his way. Yeah.
Okay, and but what happened was Peter Eastgate, nice guy, won the World Series. The rest of us bought in for either 100 or 200,000, whatever the minimum buy-in was,
Hmm.
and Peter bought in for 500,000. And Peter's a guy. Yeah, he did win the main event, but he had never played stakes this high, and it really froze him up. And he's a good poker player, so it's not that he wasn't a good poker player. But if you play way beyond your normal stake, even if you won the main event of the World Series of Poker, it freezes you. And so that's why we had the one hand with Durr where he folded the three deuces, and I had aces, and I ended up folding because I thought Peter had the long story in that hand, so I lost that hand
Enter
where I got
queen 10.
bluffed.
Yeah.
And because I thought someone had to have a deuce because everyone had played the hand.
Right.
And then when Peter folded, I thought, well, then maybe it is Durr. And it was only the second time I played with Durr 15 minutes before, so I didn't realize how wild he was. Um, but then this last hand with the where I had the aces against King Queen, they didn't show all the hands, but I'd been three betting Peter a lot because I knew he was uncomfortable,
Hmm.
and he'd been folding to me. And then he raised with his hand. You probably don't even know what his hand is, so I'm not going to tell you.
I don't even remember. Yeah.
And he was down to only about 200,000. He had raised with his hand, and I was about to slow play into Durr. And then I said,
No need.
I've been three betting. I've been three betting this guy with nothing.
Right.
Like, well, when I say nothing, Jack nine
Yeah.
suited or
Sure.
whatever.
Sure.
I've been three betting my whole range, just kind of taking advantage. I know he's uncomfortable. So you see this a lot of time. People will be aggressive and three betting. Then they finally get a good hand, they call.
Yeah.
If you're three betting all the time with other things, you want to balance your range and three bet with your good hands too.
Yeah.
And so I almost called and I said, no, just three bet. Now Durr hesitated for a while, and I could tell it was a hesitation. Again, I was a live player, he was an online player, and I said he's thinking about whether folding or calling, and he called, and now came back to Peter, and I three bet, and I don't know the amount, but as far as whether it's 15,000 or whatever it was, but Peter started the hand with under 200,000, and he just called, and the hand he had, especially as much as I three bet him before, he should have four bet or shipped.
He had a big hand, right?
He had ace king.
Yeah. Right. I remember. Yeah.
And he had raised, I was like the button, and he had three bet maybe in the cutoff or one to the right of that. And, that's actually, I think later when I initially thought about the hand, I always thought Peter just cost me 200, not only did he cost me the 400,000 I lost to Durr, but I was supposed to beat Peter out of his 150
Right.
to 200,000 because
Right.
he's
It's a
supposed to
big
four bet
swing.
or ship,
Yeah.
and we're supposed to knock Durr out of the pot.
Yeah.
And instead, Peter called, and now I end up losing over 400,000 in this hand.
Right.
And I lost the opportunity. If I'd won that hand, I'd have been up 1 point. I was already up 750,000 going into that hand.
Hmm.
I still won 250,000 for this session,
Hmm.
so I did have a win, a good win.
Up stuck.
But I would have won 1.2 million. No one had ever won $1 million on a televised program before.
So that's how fates can just change.
And I was going to be
off
well.
a
That
coin
one,
flip.
well, that was a big one. I lost that and made Durr, more of a star
Hmm.
because he was kind of new to the high stakes poker then,
Right.
and so it was big for Durr and a downer for me. And the other really big thing that I told you about before, and Antonio and I have both written about, is totally changed the course of Antonio's career, where I flopped a set, and he flopped like a double gutter and a flush draw or something, and we got all in for over 600,000. And Antonio wasn't a high stakes player at that point. He was pieced out in that. but he won that pot for over 600,000. It was the biggest pot he'd ever won, and he was pieced into high stakes poker then. But that's 600,000 that I might have won again, coupled with losing that pot to Durr and some other pots. I was the largest, what you call all in EV negative. I was all in EV
Yeah.
down over $1 million, and all in EV and all those televised show,
Yeah.
the worst of anyone, and it made a difference in what I could play in my bankroll. It was a big deal to me. That coupled with losing money on real estate, stock market, and all these things during the 2008 crashes,
Sure.
cost me a lot. But anyway, for Antonio, it was the opposite. That money he won allowed him to play slightly bigger and bigger buy-in things. And there's a very good chance, even though he was pieced out heavily in the million in the
one drop.
in the one drop that he won, he probably wouldn't have had his piece
Right.
and even been able to play in it. And so he had even said, we'd both like written separate pieces where I'd said, yeah, this made a difference in what I was doing, and Antonio said that pot was a huge difference in what he was doing, turned him into eventually being a high stakes player.
Yeah.
So it did. So for people who think, oh, it's just for fun, the money gets switched up and back, and maybe we share it. No, it totally does change
the course of life.
And people see it in their own microcosms where they're in their own home game and you win a pot. And it's funny, once I brought that up and I wrote an article for PokerStars about it, and I've had so many people say things like, I had a hand, and they're talking about themselves, that changed the course of whether I would continue to be a poker player or not. If I'd lost that hand, I was going back to work, I won that hand, my bankroll was bigger, and I could keep playing poker. And it also reminds me of a funny thing. You know Don Zuen, don't you? Old school player.
Don Z?
Don Z.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
And he had a theory that Don has a lot of theories, and I laugh at them all the time because they sound absurd.
Right.
And I laughed at him when he said this one, but then once I looked at like these hands I had and other people had been telling me their own stories, he said everyone who is a professional poker player ran good when they were young. Because you know how people always say, I ran good when I was young, and then when I got older, I wasn't as lucky.
That's how you got in
And
the
Don
game.
said, if they didn't run good, they would have quit at some point and gone back, and they're intelligent people, they'd have probably gone back to their day jobs.
Sure.
And so everyone had to have run above expectation, or they wouldn't have kept playing, and they wouldn't have the bankrolls to keep eventually be high-stakes players. So when the younger players who are professional players say, I ran good, and when I got older, I didn't run as good, it's actually true.
Yeah.
It's not just that, because it's not just that they got older and aren't as good. They did run better to get to that point. So that's his theory about that whole thing.
So I had a podcast with Bryce Yockey, who you know when he was a little kid.
I knew him at about probably 16 or 17 because he played Magic with my son Nathaniel.
Right. So he mentioned that too. Like there was like one tournament or something where he's like, if I bust this, I quit, and he ended up like doing well and then doing well and doing well, and like. I've known Bryce a long time. I trust him. Like he's just said, no, I was seriously going to quit. He's like, I can't keep losing, but that's how.
And
things
even
change.
Phil Ivey, I was lending money to play in the bigger game because we needed players. And the Larry Flint game, it was like 4 and 8,000. He was like 100, 200 stud player. Maybe they played a little bigger, had done well. We played stud. We became friends, and we needed players. And one day he said, we've been playing only a few months, and Phil at that point was probably at stud. He was maybe a favorite in the game, but closer to break even because we had tough players. Me, Ted, Oppenheim. I don't know if he was playing in it yet. John Hennigan might have been playing. Chip Reese, Doyle Brunson played some. So we had good players, and Phil wasn't at that level yet. But I wanted Phil to keep playing because Larry wanted to play a full game, 8-handed. And then Phil said, I'm not going to borrow any more money from you because, I'm going to go back to the Commerce and play whatever stakes he was playing. And I'll make it and I'll pay you back. And I said, no. I said, I'm not worried. I have the money. You can keep playing. He says, no, I don't want to borrow any more for you. And he said, if I lose today, I'm done. And I'm going to go back to the smaller games. And he got a hand where he had 3 6s. I don't know if it was rolled up or not.
Okay.
And Larry ended up with 4 to a flush on board. And Larry doesn't bluff that much. And Phil Phil had been betting, and then on 6th Street, Larry took the lead because he had a 4 flush on board and bet. And on the river, Larry bet again a 4 flush on board. Phil didn't fill up, and it was put Phil all in.
Oh, so he had no fold equity.
No,
Or did-
Larry bet the last of Phil's chips.
Oh, so Phil still had to call off the last
He had to
bet.
call his
Yeah.
last bet
Yeah.
and shrugged his shoulders, put his last bet
Pot's
in,
too big.
and even said to me, well, I guess this is my last hand. He said something like, well, I guess
This is
I'm
my last
done.
hand of poker, yeah.
Last hand of high stakes, I'm going to go back to the conference. As he put it in, and Larry was bluffing. And Phil won that pot, and from that hand, he never went back to smaller stakes, except on the internet. And Phil wasn't yet good enough in the mixed games, but then he spent, once the internet got big and he started playing all sorts of different games, he at that time only was a 7-card stud player.
Wow.
Terrible hold'em player, terrible at everything
That's
else.
funny, yeah.
But that pot kept him as a struggling player. He still wasn't as good as the rest of us because we were older. But eventually he did become good and
Of course.
a
Rest
winning
is
player.
history, yeah.
But that Phil was always going to be a good poker player, but that pot might have saved him a year or two
Right.
in his development, winning that pot. So it just shows you, even something like that, it's funny, and again, talking about it saved him a year or two, it's like I told Sasha one time, she had a loss, and she liked the quote, and I said, well, you're going to end up doing well, and you're going to have more money than you have now. And I know she was really down about losing this session or this pot, the big PLO pot, whatever it was. She lost what she had for the session. And I just said, think of it this way: you didn't lose money, you lost time. You will get that money back, but you just cost yourself. It might be a week, it might be a month, whatever it is, because it was a big pot. You cost yourself some time. You'll have money, so don't think of it as money lost.
Boom. Lessons learned, guys. And TV doesn't tell the full story. Like, a lot of the guys on Live at the Basketball High Stakes, you've seen them grow from the bottom up. The viewers, just like when I was a viewer of when you guys are in high stakes, we don't see the grueling time that it takes for you to get to that point.
Well, there's a lot of to get to be a good player.
Yeah, it could be a good player.
Well,
and
obviously,
the grind.
the grind to get to where you can play higher and higher stakes.
Yeah.
It's like a pyramid scheme of one person or something.
Right.
You keep getting further up the pyramid, and hopefully, again, it's a cash game skill that tournament players don't need to know when you should advance to the next thing.
Yeah.
When we talk about other skills that are needed to be a successful cash game player. Yeah. You advance when
it's more
the game bigger than the one you're playing is a really good looking game.
Yeah.
And even has some of the people who you were beating at your stake.
Yes.
And then you decide, hey, and you're winning, not because you're losing. Too many people, when they're losing, jump to the higher game to try to get even. That's not the right time.
Right.
You should be building from a win.
Yeah.
And you advance and see if you can hang at the next level, and you keep going to higher and higher levels.
Right.
But I was going to say something.
I don't know. You were just, there's a difference between just being responsible, moving up the stakes, which a lot of those guys on the,
I know what I was going to say.
Yeah.
You're going to say what the grind is, and the other grind is learning poker.
Right.
And knowing the right way to learn. And again, you should always be learning from the people in your game.
Yes.
Maybe you're the best person in your game, but even if you're the best person,
a
lot of times, an example is, I will see someone who I think is really pretty bad, makes bad calls or bad bluffs, whatever. They do a lot of things bad, and the guy's not doing that badly.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he wasn't doing as well as I did, but he's hanging on, and he's maybe even a profitable player. And I'll see it all the time where someone will say, they'll see an isolated play someone made or a bad call, and they'll say, he's a terrible player.
Well, it's one play.
No, and then but what I'll say to them, but he's been a winner overall. If he's doing these bad things you see, there must be some compensating good things he's doing.
Right.
And a guy that comes to mind who gets criticized a lot is Phil Hellmuth.
Mm-hmm.
And people always like to knock him and criticize his tournament play. And I'll say, well, if you think he's doing some things bad, he's had some good results. He's got to be doing these other things good. Maybe you'd realize. And then we know if you analyze, whether it's Phil, whether it's Carlos Mortensen is one, where people might not like some of their play or even their play against high-stakes players, but what you see is they're probably playing against weak players better than you are. Phil will make some dinky, stupid-looking bets that get called, value bets. I'm betting what I would bet against a good player, which is more. I'm betting a bigger amount to make it look like a polarized bluff or a good hand spot,
Yeah.
and hoping the guy guesses wrong.
Yeah.
Phil is winning the guy's five
Incremental.
extra whatever big blinds or whatever he's winning, and I'm winning nothing. And so I'm saying what you learn again, or the way you learn is by seeing. Even if someone overall you don't think is a better poker player than you for whatever reason, a lot of people are doing things that if you analyze it, it might have been a better sized bet, a better thing that they were doing than what you were doing. So you can win even off of people. Anytime you see someone doing better than you expect, don't just always say, well, this guy's just running good.
Yeah.
He's maybe, maybe he's running over people.
Yeah.
And forcing them out and getting the choppage, what we call picking up pots that where no one had anything. There's things he's doing that help him win. If someone's winning, it doesn't go on. Yeah, for short term, people can run good, but
yeah.
long term, if people keep winning, and you keep thinking they're lucky, that's probably not true.
And even, we've seen so many hands in our lifetime. Even very good players can just be dealt losers. Like I've seen you, and you also saw me in the mixed team. Like things were just like not happening.
Yeah, you're a great mixed game player, Wayne. You're just unlucky. Oh,
no, I'm definitely not good, but I definitely like there are some things that are just like way below average.
Well, I'm sure they are, but the worse you are, the less confidence you can have in that analysis. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
As you get better, you'll probably be better at saying, yeah, that was unlucky, versus when, that was stupid. And even for myself, I have a losing session yesterday. Well, twice I played the wrong game. And again, this happens
Right.
You don't look at the plaques. You're supposed to look every hand.
Yeah.
You get older, you can do those things more frequently. At the end, I end up losing, and it's almost like I don't even want to admit to myself that that I did some of that and cost me. Sometimes it costs you in ways that are really, on a chaos theory type of way, where I lost a pot to someone who was about to go off and play bad. I got them back on their feet, stuff like that. It can really, sometimes you make these little or one-hand stupid mistakes. It can, again, we talk about changing the future and changing the course. Yeah, that can do it.
So, one thing is, especially in the live games that don't run that often, and when they go late night past, the 10, 12, 14, 24-hour mark, and it's like 5-handed, then 4-handed, then 3-handed. The pro players are trying to, also finish the guy off as fast as possible because you pay less rake, and then sometimes, some hand goes wrong, or there's a mistake that's made, and then some guy, or whatever the spot, or the guy almost busts, wins a pot, and then they just,
Well, what you learn, there are a couple things. Again, this is a management thing. I will, again, just for sport, I won't quit on someone when I know that's all the money he has left. But if he makes, and I'll just put it in terms of dollars. Let's say I'm playing a game that's big enough where I have $20,000, and the guy is down to a couple hundred. Okay, and I know, because again, that's actually another skill of being a cash game player. You know if the guy can get more money or not, or this was his last money. You basically, it's pretty carnivorous, but you have people counted down who are losing players of what they'll play for that day. If the guy had a few $100s and he now builds it up to a $1,500 or $2,000, I'll probably quit on him instead of trying to win his last $2,000.
wow, that's
because it will hurt more, especially in a head-up scenario where there's a lot of variance. There can be variance in the games we play, and even in the no-limit games. I figure, okay, the guy will feel better. At least he won. I never quit after winning a hand. I would never beat a guy and have him down to 500 and quit on him. That's just not sporting. But if he made a comeback of a couple thousand and it's 4 a.m, I might say, I don't need to win the last 2,000. I just quit. Because there's nothing worse than losing all in those situations. Or the worst thing, again, cash game skill, not a tournament skill, and you see people make this mistake, and I've made it myself. You've been playing for 12 hours, and you count your chips up, and you're stuck $100. And so you say, I don't want to quit, I'm losing. And so you decide to keep playing because you're going to play another round if you'd won that 100 or whatever small amount it was, and you got ahead, you're going to quit so you can go home and feel good you had another winning session. If I ever say to myself, I'm going to play another hand and hope I win so I'm not stuck $100 or something small, I will pull myself, what's the right word, virtually, no, what's the, in an imaginary way, I'll imagine myself pulling myself up by my shirt collar, yanking myself out of the chair, because there is nothing that could ever feel worse. Well, maybe there is something.
A lot of things.
Maybe there are. But one of the many really bad things is if you have 9,900 in front of you and you're in 10,000, and you decide to try to win that extra 100, and then you lose the 10,000, the whole 10,000, you're broke. Yeah. You are sick for a long time, and it's a big mistake. And it's just, and again, these things that I'm talking about, you might say, well, yeah, but you were plus EV, you were a better player than the other guy, you could have busted him. But it's not just plus EV. People figure plus EV as a money thing. Just think of what the psychological plus EV versus minus EVs are in these two situations. Psychologically, winning that extra 100, especially if you can handle that, you basically broke about even, versus the psychological minus EV of going broke there. That, you know what happens when you go broke there from that 10,000? You don't sleep that night. You come to the card room the next day with whatever money you got out of the bank or from where you get your money, and you're groggy and you're not about to play well either, and you maybe lose another 10,000. So you might say that I was making I wasn't following a plus EV, situation, but no, you're not looking at the bigger picture. I actually was. I was preventing myself from hurting myself psychologically, and that's important.
So the last Mythbuster is you and Shannon Elizabeth. There was like, you want to tell this one?
Why do you bring that nonsense up?
It's fun. It's funny.
Yeah, you brought this up. First of all, Shannon Elizabeth, she might even lived at my house for a while. I never know on my kids' side. We had a big house. I had my side of the house, and then there's another place where all the other bedrooms are. And Joey and his friends and cousins and whoever would live on the other side. I would stay in my office, do things online, and go out through. There's kind of a main entrance where I'd see people and I'd see my kids, but I wouldn't be on the other wing of the house. So I would find out later people lived at my house for a year or two, and I didn't even know. Yeah. Joe Stapleton, I think, did live on my couch in one
Shout
of the.
Joe Stapleton.
Yeah, in one of the rooms. I don't know how long. Joe can tell you. And other friends of Joey's, obviously Amanda Leatherman lived at my house for a while because she was a girlfriend, but also Shannon Elizabeth. I think she had her own place, but she probably stayed over a lot too. So what happened? So I was pretty close to Shannon. And Shannon's kind of funny. It was at a period where I was teaching Joe poker, and I would say something just like we're doing now, and Shannon had a notebook, one of these small spiral notebooks. Anything I said. Talk about respect for my son's girlfriend. She would write it down. Like if I said something about poker, she was trying to learn poker too. Wow. She would write it. What'd you say there? Could you say that again? And she would write it down. So she was, shout out to Shannon, very studious about learning poker. She took it really seriously. Mm-hmm. So she, whatever. So she was Joey's girlfriend. I'm guessing for a year. I don't know how long. Anyway, we ended up getting down to the round of 8 in the NBC Heads Up, and I think we ended up playing each other. And I know she beat me. And she had the best hand every hand. I kept trying to run over her, and someone had told her that I will try to bluff her into call, and she kept calling me down and beating me, and she busted me. She told me later that she worked with people before she played me. They went over hands and told her don't let them run over you, which is what I kept trying to do. But anyway, in our round of 8 or round of 60 matches, whatever it was, to get down to that point. We both won, and we were real happy, and we went towards each other. And again, she's the type of person that I'm close enough that I give a hug or a kiss or something, maybe on the cheek. That's what you do. But it ended up we kissed on the lips, which and Wayne brought it up to me, and I had a few other people bring it up. And this is how innocent that we were. Obviously close friends. Okay, I didn't know it happened until someone had watched the broadcast and said, "Hey, are you that in with Shannon Elizabeth? I saw you kiss her on TV." And I said, what are you even talking about? And I don't watch poker on TV. Occasionally, like if I won a tournament, I might have watched it. That's about it. But like any of these other
Right,
TV shows,
right,
I don't
yeah.
watch any of them. So I had to go back and watch it and hear the announcer say, "Hey, Barry Greenstein, like making a move on Shannon Elizabeth or something like that." And so it was totally innocent. And it's like, and I even think later, I think it's more a Hollywood thing. She's an actress, and Hollywood people kiss more than normal
Right, right,
people.
yeah.
That's how you shake hands or hug or whatever. And that's kind of she probably initiated it, not me. And it was so
It's just like,
innocent,
right.
I didn't know anything about it. And then Wayne asked me when we discussed this, "What about American Pie?" She was like a character in that. And I remember Joey when he introduced her saying, "Hey, she's been in some movies. The most famous one was American Pie." And then he said, like, she takes her top off. She's like a teenager, I think, or something. Or maybe played a teenager.
She played a teen. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever.
But, I said to Joe, well, I'm not going to watch a movie where your girlfriend takes her,
Right.
takes her top off or
Right.
something like that. So I've never seen American Pie.
Okay. Well, thank you to Barry Greenstein for coming in, and hopefully maybe you can commentate or come on the show or something
Or
in the
probably
future.
not.
Or probably not. That
Because,
time's over for you.
yeah, I get invited to that stuff all the time. And I just say, I did that. It's
Yeah.
like,
You're done.
yeah, I've done it. And let other people have their time. I see other people enjoy it more than I do, so let them do it.
Yeah. No. I mean, I give up my seat all the time now, and just yeah, because there's a lot of people that want to play in the show. And the
Yeah.
final joke is that you have a famous book called Ace on the River, but you only play mixed game now, so now it would be called Deuce on the Third Draw.
Yeah.
And for the guys who don't understand, you'll get it when you get there.
Yeah, when you play. Yeah, that's Wayne's proudest
Joke.
joke. Okay, at least as far as I'm concerned.
All right. Well, when you see Barry Greenstein, say hi and
Okay,
reminisce
yeah,
all the good times.
that's right. Say hi because I want to compare Wayne's broadcast to Joe Ingram's broadcast. I can tell you with Joe Ingram's broadcast,
A lot of people.
when I went to the World Series after I did, his what do you call these webcasts? What are these called?
Podcasts.
Podcasts.
Yeah.
I thought pod was just audio. Maybe not. I don't know.
It's just.
But anyway, people started coming up to me telling me, say it got to where I wasn't Barry Greenstein, like old school legend or whatever that people like to call me, poker player.
Yeah.
I was the podcast guy now, or the webcast guy. So so if you see Wayne's thing,
Yeah.
come up, tell me whether you liked it or not, and I want to know how many people watch Wayne's stuff.
Less than Joey, they guarantee. Smash that like button, hit subscribe. Thanks. We'll see you. See you, Barry Greenstein.
Later, everyone.
Right.